I'm 13 News Now meteorologist Evan Stewart. We have a tropical update for you this Thursday, September 21st, and a lot going on here off the southeast coastline. We'll get right to it. We have what is now a potential tropical cyclone. It hasn't become one just yet, but the National Hurricane Center, they wanted to issue already some tropical storm warnings for parts of Virginia and North Carolina, so we had to call it something, that being a potential tropical cyclone. We have Nigel, still a Category 1 storm moving towards the northeast, and what could likely become Philippe down here through the areas around the Cabo Verde Islands, but we are really going to focus here closely on what will likely become Ophelia, whether it's tropical, post-tropical, or subtropical, or not tropical. Doesn't really matter as far as the effects, but you can see doesn't look like a typical tropical system because it's not. Sort of has more of that comma shape that we expect from coastal lows and nor'easters, and that's sort of what this is. It's a wannabe nor'easter that might have some tropical characteristics just before it makes landfall, somewhere, say, close to Cape Lookout, North Carolina. So here's the 5 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Still a potential tropical cyclone, winds of 35, so it does have tropical storm winds, and certainly gusts over tropical storm strength, 45-mile-per-hour gusts. Moving to the north at 8. Right now it is about 415 miles south of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Again, likely becoming subtropical or tropical as we head through the overnight. Saturday, 2 a.m., 60-mile-per-hour winds here just east of Cape Fear, North Carolina, south of Cape Lookout. Likely coming ashore somewhere close to Cape Lookout, North Carolina. Once it moves inland and gets over land, it'll quickly start to weaken and eventually become a remnant low by Sunday afternoon up around D.C. and head towards areas of eastern New Jersey as we head into Monday. So let's time things out here. This is a close-up view of eastern Virginia and North Carolina. I've added the winds on here. That's what this is showing. The wind gusts will also show the direction. Through the overnight, maybe a passing shower in a few spots. Generally looking at clouds on the increase. So by Friday morning, 6 a.m., skies becoming mostly cloudy. Could be a couple of showers around in the morning. Better chance of rain comes as the system gets closer Friday afternoon and especially into Friday evening. I think Friday evening and Friday night is when we're going to see some of the heaviest of the rain here across coastal Virginia and North Carolina. But notice, even by 3 p.m., wind gusts over 30 miles per hour will be even stronger for the Outer Banks of North Carolina and possibly even up along the eastern shore of Virginia, mainly because of that wind coming in across the water. There's no friction there. Once the wind hits land, it encounters that friction and slows down, but it doesn't have a lot of friction out over the water. That's why we'll see some of the strongest winds through coastal areas. Friday evening, notice some rounds of rain moving in when we start to see these yellows and the oranges. Those are areas of more moderate, at times heavy rain, and they'll be more like tropical downpours. So it is just going to be a windy and messy Friday evening. Now, with these winds, we could see some issues with power outages, even if it's just a limb falling on a power line, not necessarily a tree falling over. That could cause some issues with spotty power outages as we go Friday evening, Friday night into early Saturday. Notice rounds of rain. Here's Friday, 11 o'clock, rounds of rain moving through. Winds gusting over 40 miles per hour. We could see some gusts closer to 50, especially through the eastern shore and the Outer Banks. Now into Saturday, that's when the low is really going to pass just west of parts of Hampton roads and move through more central North Carolina, closer to Raleigh, and then up through western parts of Virginia. That might allow some dry air to be pulled into the system here on the eastern side, which means the rain will now become more showers and more thunderstorms, so there will be some breaks. Could still be some of those tropical downpours, which could cause some issues with flooding into Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, and maybe an early morning shower on Sunday here before everything starts to lift off towards the north. Rainfall amounts, generally 2 to 4 inches throughout the area. There will be some spots that see a little bit more, some spots that see a little bit less, but 2 to 4 is sort of the average that we're going here. And that was from the computer model here, is what it's saying. And here's the human forecasters. Here's what we're saying. Again, generally 2 to 4 inches. Could be some locally higher amounts somewhere here through southeastern Virginia and coastal North Carolina that could see 4 inches or more. Certainly getting closer to the Outer Banks, I think that's where we have the potential for some of the heaviest of the rain. Now, that could cause some flooding. When you get the heavy rains coming in, it overwhelms the storm drains, low-lying or poor drainage areas. See that flooding happening first. And Friday morning, First through coastal North Carolina and then into Friday evening, Saturday morning, coastal Virginia. Very, very possible that we will see some issues with some flooding. There's a flood watch that is posted for eastern Virginia and North Carolina because of that potential for the heavy rain. Not as big of an issue from Raleigh towards Richmond, towards Washington, D.C., or back towards Roanoke. And then it starts to lift off towards the north. So even during the day Saturday, we could still have some issues with the flooding if some of those more showery and thunderstorm storms pop up. Could still cause some heavy rainfall, which could cause some issues with flooding from the rain. The other issue that we have is flooding from the storm surge or from the increasing tides as we go through the weekend. Here's another look at the rainfall amounts. Again, the computer model's in pretty good agreement, about 3 inches or so in that 2 to 4 area. Some spots a little bit more, some spots a little bit less. Now let's talk about the winds with the system. This is from the European model, and here's coastal Virginia and North Carolina from the eastern shore, working your way through the peninsula, south side, and down through northeastern North Carolina and the Outer Banks. This is Thursday, 6 p.m., northeast winds. Some gusts here, 10 to 15 miles per hour, not too bad. As we head into Friday morning, 6 a.m., notice we're in the 20 mile per hour range, maybe a little bit higher towards Cape Hatteras. Friday afternoon, winds start to increase as that low gets closer. Notice those wind gusts over 30 miles per hour, maybe even getting closer to 50 miles per hour for Cape Hatteras. Again, it sort of just sticks out there and is an area that catches some of the strongest of the winds with most of these coastal systems. Friday night into Saturday morning, as the low gets closer and works its way up here through central Virginia and North Carolina, still looking at those northeast winds, and that'll be a factor into Saturday for that tidal flooding as those winds push the water up the Chesapeake Bay and up the James River, the York River, Tappahannock. That's where we could start to have issues with tidal flooding during the day on Saturday. The rain flooding, mainly Friday night into early Saturday, but Saturday into Saturday evening is when we could see some of the biggest issues with that tidal flooding. Notice again, wind gusts over 30, maybe even 40 miles per hour, close to 50. Things start to wind down as we get here into Saturday. The European model keeps this a little bit closer to the coastline. The American model and a few others keep it a little bit farther inland. So again, these are some approximate wind gusts. Still could be over 40, maybe even 50 miles per hour in spots even into Saturday evening. Then as the low works its way towards the north into Sunday, we start to see those wind speeds decrease. And certainly by Sunday afternoon, as winds switch around towards the northwest and the west, that'll cause the winds to diminish and also cause some of the water levels to go down. So only looking at really 2 high tide cycles, that'll be the issue. That'll be late Friday night into early Saturday and then Saturday afternoon. Here's Sewell's Point, sort of that point of reference for Hampton roads. Friday afternoon, folks are getting off work, going home. Some minor tidal flooding. That starts at around 4.5 feet. We'll be up around 4.6. But with those strong winds coming in, the tide is not allowed to really leave and work its way back out into the ocean. So when the next high tide comes in, we see that tide even higher. This is the overnight tide. Friday night into Saturday morning, up towards 6 feet. Tide goes down towards low tide, isn't allowed to escape back out into the ocean because of those strong northeast winds. Tide levels go up even more into Friday or Saturday afternoon, up towards 6.3 feet. That's moderate. Major begins at 6.5. So we'll be close to that major tidal flooding issue. Now, again, some of our biggest storms, thinking back towards Isabel, the 1933 hurricane, that's when water levels were close to 8 feet. So this is still going to be well over 1.5 feet to almost 2 feet below that. But that's just sort of to give you a point of reference that this is going to be an issue. This is going to be a moderate deal. It is not certainly the worst that we've seen, but it will be an issue. I mentioned some of those inland spots up the James River and the York River. That's where I think we could have some bigger issues. This is the tide level forecast at Yorktown tomorrow afternoon, 4.7, minor tidal flooding there. Moderate tidal flooding, though, as we get into the overnight, Friday night into Saturday, around 4 a.m., 5.4 feet. And then this is the big one, Saturday afternoon, tide levels up to 5.7 feet. Major tidal flooding there in Yorktown begins at 5.5. So it's up towards Yorktown and Jamestown, those areas that I think we could have some of the bigger issues with tidal flooding as we go through Saturday. Now, some of the rain will be tapering off. It'll just be showers and thunderstorms, so we might see some sunshine, but the tides will still be an issue because of those strong winds. Not as much of an issue for the Outer Banks. I still think there'll be some overwash on Highway 12. We're still looking at 6 to 9 foot waves. Tides will still be up, but not as big of an issue as we head through Duck. You can see nuisance flooding as we go Friday into Saturday. Could be a little bit of sound side flooding, especially as you work your way closer to Ocracoke Island or maybe areas around Hatteras Island. As you work your way up the Outer Banks, not as much of an issue with the sound side flooding, but still with this tropical system approaching and moving through, we will see some of those issues, especially along the Outer Banks and Highway 12. So let's talk about the system here. This is the European model once again, and we'll show you that spin. And I mentioned that other system that is expected to come off the coast of Africa. We'll take a look at that one as well. Again, here's Nigel working its way towards the north. Here's what will likely become Ophelia coming north. This is the European model. Remember, that's a little bit farther east, closer to the coastline. That's why we're looking at some of the stronger winds if it's closer to the water, at least according to the European, then lifting off towards the northeast. Here comes that next system that we were talking about off the coast of Africa. The good news is we will see it curve off towards the north and east, well east of Bermuda, as a lot of other systems have. That's according to the European, partly because of the low that is moving through here. That'll likely be Ophelia, carrying it off towards the north and east. And the American model, very similar. Here's our system, close to the coastline, maybe a little bit farther inland, working its way towards the north and northeast. Here comes that next system. Also notice that that one is expected to move off towards the north and maybe interact with another one and sort of meander its way around there. This goes through next Saturday, so we won't have to worry about what will likely become Philippe, at least at this point. But we're certainly watching what will happen here across eastern Virginia and North Carolina with Ophelia. We'll, of course, have updates throughout the night, updates throughout the day Friday and into Saturday. Of course, we'll have those on air and online.